Hello, Internet. My name is Ryan Ingram, and today we're going to be talking about The Automatic Millionaire by David Bach. This is one of the first financial books that I've read, and it had a tremendous impact on my life. I would go as far as to say I wouldn't have a quarter of the things had I not read this book. It helped that I read this book at an early age. I read this book at 18. That's around the time I became a Christian. I also read Crazy Love by Francis Chan just shortly before this. That introduced me to the concept of reverse tithing, which, if you're not familiar, it's as easy as it sounds. Uh, Living off 10% of your income and giving away 90. As soon as I heard that, that resonated with something in my soul, and I said, "Oh man, I have to do that." And I said, "Uh-oh, wait, I don't know anything about money." So it was then that I started reading as many financial books as I could possibly get my hands on. One of the first books that I came across was David Bach's. So let's talk about that today. There are 3 points that I want to go over, which are right here behind me. The first is automating your savings. Really just take the requirement of discipline completely out of it. The second, rethink regular purchases. In this book, he calls it the latte factor. And then the third, that this was a first to me. Like I said, it was one of the first books that I've read. But since then, pretty much every financial book, especially if it kind of sort of crosses over into the self help region, then all of them kind of reiterate this point. In order to be tremendously wealthy, you don't need a high paying job. And a lot of people that have tons of money don't have all the materialistic, all the really nice things out there that you would commonly associate with being rich. So let's dive into that. I recorded a video yesterday, and that's released, called The Wealth Formula. In that, we go into a lot of detail, but the first part is just wrapping your head around the future value of currency. For every dollar spent, if you invest it and you receive a return of around 8% over 30 years, $1, $10.06, $10, $100.60, and then $100, $1,006. So just imagine for a second if you had the ability to somehow automate going to the gym. If you could just log in to a portal online and say, "I'm going to go to the gym every morning at 6 a.m. and I'm going to stay there for 1 hour." And then somehow, miraculously, somebody else would go in your place for the gym for 1 hour. However, you would get all of the results and have all of the benefits from that. That's kind of what automating your savings is. So if you automate your savings, similar to going to the gym, it no longer requires discipline. It happens in the background for you. For example, I got my first real job at the age of 21. I was a government employee. I had a set salary, and I got a percentage of a raise each year. So it generally was around between 2 and 5%. When I first got the job, I recently graduated from college. I got my first check, I think it was somewhere around $800 after they took out all of the taxes and whatnot. And I was floored. I was really excited. That was all the money that I needed to handle my living expenses. And then to my shock, 2 weeks later, I got another check for around $800. I didn't need it. All my expenses were paid, and I still had a little bit of money left over to buy food and anything that happened kind of as it came up. So what I did is I immediately started saving 50% of my income. When I got hired on, I made around $33,000 per year. When I left that job, I was somewhere in the $44,000 range. However, what I did was each time I got a raise, I shoved it over into savings. So I would take the second check that had the raise, I would take the difference between the previous check that didn't include that raise. Whatever that difference was, I would log back onto my portal and I would change the percentage or the dollar amount that I contributed to savings. On that first check, however, when I first got the raise, whatever that difference was, I allowed myself to take it. A good reward for me. I allowed myself to spend that on whatever it is that I wanted to. So when I left that job after 5 or 6 years, I had about $60,000 in savings, which is a really big deal because, again, like I said, it required zero discipline. I set it once, I stayed on top of it, I didn't touch it, and then I continued living and budgeting based on whatever was remaining. And that's one of David's real key points in the book is he's saying, it doesn't require discipline. The surefire way to make sure that you do it time and time and time again is take that decision out of your control. So if you have the ability to log on to some sort of portal, whatever payroll processing your company uses, and if you're able to set aside a certain dollar amount or percentage to a separate account, a 401k, anything of the likes, then you're going to be way better off. You're going to forget about it. That money's going to go into that account every month. And especially if it's a 401k, you're not going to be able to touch it without going through a great deal of hoops. So that money is just going to collectively sit there and start working for you, which true wealth comes from having control over a lot of money that's out there working for you instead of you showing up to a job every day working for that money. The second point to talk about is rethinking regular purchases. So in this book, David Bach calls this the latte factor. And what that means is he makes the case that you could have a tremendous amount of money if you just stop going to Starbucks and getting a latte every day. So not everybody goes to Starbucks. Not everybody drinks a latte. I know I sure don't. But this formula that we just used, if you start thinking through a lens of each dollar that I have is worth 10 future dollars. Again, that's considering 8% over 30 years. You could have longer than that, which would greatly increase those funds, and you could make a higher percent interest, which would also greatly increase those funds. So each dollar is a minimum of $10 in the future for the 30-year version of yourself. So instead of going and spending $5 for a coffee or $10 for a meal, start thinking of this meal doesn't cost me $10. This meal's costing me $100.60. Or this doesn't actually cost me $100. It's actually taking over $1,000 from my future self. So that's the second point that just made a giant impact on how I thought about money. The third and final takeaway that I had from this book that really resonates with me, again, like I said, it's been reaffirmed over and over again in a lot of financial literacy or self-help books, and that's that you can become as wealthy as you'd like to be without a high-paying job or having tons of nice things. And when I say nice things are not required, what I'm referring to is a lot of times we accidentally perceive people with nice cars, nice clothes, all of the latest technology as being incredibly wealthy, when that's not really the case. Thomas Stanley has written a bunch of books, like the Millionaire Next Door series, that goes over how millionaires really spend their money, what they spend, what they drive, what they spend on clothes, and all of that. And your average self-made millionaire dresses very, very humbly. And as far as a high-paying job goes, it's also, once you start reading a bunch of financial literature, you'll really start to realize that a lot of people are just living paycheck to paycheck. The more money they make, the more money they spend. So if you were to automate your savings, even if you had a very low-paying job, it's still possible that you could finish light years ahead of people that have much higher paying jobs because you're taking more control over how much money you're keeping. The more money you keep, the wealthier you'll be. The quicker you'll be able to have that money start working for you rather than you working for the money. And as your money amasses, even if you don't have it tied up in like the stock market, any sort of investment vehicle, will allow you to take advantage of opportunities that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise if you were still tied to your 9-to-5 job. So again, this is a recap of The Automatic Millionaire by David Bach. And again, my big 3 takeaways were to automate your savings, rethink regular purchases, and just be happy and comfortable where you are and just start saving more so that you could gain more wealth much sooner. I highly encourage you to still go out and read this book. If you have any comments, questions, or just want to talk about anything else on the channel, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Look forward to seeing you next time.